I bought Elvis's private jet. How cool would it be to take Elvis's jet to Graceland? The two undercover FBI agents said, I know that jet, get it off of this property right now.
There was an FBI investigation. You got kicked out of Graceland twice.
That hole is deep, and it gets weirder and weirder the more I learn about it. I received an email from somebody that watched the channel and said, hey, did you know that Elvis's private jet is going up for auction? And it's the one that was abandoned out in Roswell, New Mexico. So I get this video and I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, this thing's got a lot of views. And I look at the interior of it. It is phenomenal. It was bright red velvet with gold buckles. The outside of the airplane's totally trashed and it's missing the engines off of it and stuff. So the outside, it's never going to fly again. But the inside is absolutely the most epic thing I've ever seen in my life. So I did some research and I discovered that this thing had been up for auction a few times before and they couldn't even get a bid on it. And some of them were only $10,000 just to get an opening bid. Nobody would even bid on it. So I'm like, heck yeah, this thing might go for pretty cheap.
Right.
We could find something to do with this, even if we just park it somewhere and like, hey, we got Elvis's jet or something. So I registered for the auction at Meekum. It was right here in Kissimmee, Florida, on Elvis's birthday. So that worked out really kind of special.
You register here, but it's in Arizona?
Yeah, so they'll just show pictures of it because
okay.
they're not going to take the airplane and bring it to the auction.
Yeah. And
so
and people aren't going to go out there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so they just bring pictures of it and you just kind of do a virtual bid. Priscilla Presley was there. I mean, it was kind of their big deal that day. Went out, and what sucks is I was probably only 6 feet away from Priscilla for the whole time, and I never once it crossed my mind, maybe I should say hi to Priscilla Presley.
Right.
Never, because I was so freaked out and worried about buying this thing or bidding and how the game was going to work, with the auction and stuff. Because a high-profile piece like the Elvis jet coming up, the auction house is highly incentive to make sure that thing sells because that's their name, their reputation that they can get something sold. So I knew that there was probably going to be some, funkery going on. And unfortunately, the dirty truth behind auctions is there's always a minimum. Even if it's a no reserve auction, the seller ends up being the buyer.
Yeah.
So they just buy it back and they have to pay a fee if it doesn't meet their amount that they're willing to sell it for. So yes, it's sold as a non-reserve, but it's sold back to the seller. I can't say that with all cases, but that's not unusual.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also feel like sometimes they'll put somebody in the audience.
Oh, 100%. Oh, yeah.
I went to an auction for a house one time, and I started bidding at, let's say, 60,000, and then they had another guy bidding. That guy drove it all the way up to, and he got the house at, let's say, 100,000. A week later, I get a phone call from the auctioneer saying, hey, guess what? You were the next bidder. The guy couldn't do it, so you got it at 98,000, let's say. And I went, no. I started in bidding at 60. Me and this guy went back and forth for like 30 or whatever it was, 30, 40, whatever. It was me and there might have been one other guy in there. I was like, that guy, because he said that guy, turns out he didn't have the money. He couldn't qualify. I said, right.
Magically.
You were supposed to qualify him. I'm qualified. I have the money. You brought in a guy that was not qualified that then ran up the auction 30 some odd thousand to 40,000, almost $40,000. I'm like, so I'll give you 60. Oh, that's not how it works. I'm like, right. So you're going to go with the next guy underneath me, which was 58. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like that, you know what I'm saying? And I felt like something's wrong. That's so scammy.
Agreed wholeheartedly. But in my previous life, I had done a lot of these auctions.
Right.
So I knew the game.
Okay.
And what I learned is it's not how low you can get the price. That's not the game for an auction. It's not how cheap something is. They have a list price, and I knew the list price for the Elvis jet was about $300,000 is what they were going to try to get for it. So I knew.
You just said they tried to auction it before. Nobody even bid.
But I knew from my research that even the other auctions, they didn't get an opening bid, but it didn't mean they don't have a reserve on it. Okay. So they still need to try to get enough money so they can cover their costs and things like that. So the trick with auctions is, for me, it's not about where the bidding starts. It's about what they actually have to get out of this thing.
Okay.
And I knew that they'd be somewhere around 300,000. I also know that one of the tactics with auctions is they use the buyer premium and the seller's premium as a way to make the sale. So an auction will charge, call it 10% on both sides. So 300,000, they'll charge 30,000 to the buyer, 30,000 to the seller. They're going to make 60 grand on that thing. Well, they also use it if a bidder only gets up to 270,000, they'll say, hey, we'll waive your buyer's or your seller's fee, so you'll still net the same if we can make this deal. And now the seller still nets the same at 270 as they would if it went to 300. So I also knew that I was playing, and the auction houses, they just want the close. They want the sell. So they'd rather take 30 than nothing.
Right.
So I also knew that anything over like 250 is really dangerous because I could get stuck with it at that point. But I knew I needed to be the second bidder, the second highest, because I knew that phone call would come afterwards.
Okay.
So that's just the way the game is played.
That's so horrible.
It's a freaking terrible, it's not honest in the, pureness sense of it, but that's the game that's played. So I register, I go to the auction. We were there, all the hype and everything like that. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to start the bidding at 50 grand. Well, that bidding opened up at 150 grand. I was like, man, that happened fast.
Right.
So then, I'm sitting there. I was like, okay, is there actually anybody else bidding on this, or is it a phone bidder or phantom bidder? Oh, here's a fun nugget. At auctions, if you have an open hand, if the people out in the crowd are going 50 over here, 50 over here, 50 over here, that means they don't have real money.
Right.
A closed hand means they have a real bidder. So they have money in hand.
Okay.
So that's a little cheat code. If you're in an auction, you can say, I got 50 over here, 50 over here. They don't really have the money, but if we got a 50,000, that means they actually have a bidder. Anyways, so the bidding goes and goes and goes, and then it stalls out, I want to say at 200 or maybe just below that. And they still haven't lifted the reserve yet. So I'm like, all right, let's start having some fun. So I'm like, 200. And my budget on this thing was 100 grand.
Right.
So I was way outside of what my budget was. But I knew I needed to be the second bidder, and they hadn't lifted the reserve yet. And I knew I did not want to be the high bidder when they lifted the reserve, because now you're hooked. So then the bidding, I bid 200, I think. And then there's a guy on the phone that bids 220. And then I'm like, man, this is such a bad idea, but let's just see where this goes, 230. And then that was definitely my highest point at that point. And so then the phone bids at 240. And I'm like, man, who the heck? And they haven't lifted the reserve yet. So I'm like, okay, this is part of that game where you got to be on your toes. And I was done. So I'm sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, because then the auctioneer will kind of drag it out for a little bit, and he'll try to, hook it for then, instead of $10,000 increments, go to 5,000 and stuff like that. Then I was just standing there trying to calculate the risk at this point. Then all of a sudden they yell 260 from behind me. And then I was like, what happened? And I think the guy on the phone, it was the same bidder. I don't know if there was a miscommunication or something, but it went from 240 to 260, and nobody else had bid at all. I think he bid twice on that. Well, anyway, they lifted the reserve right at 260, and I was not the bidder at that point. So I'm like, I'm out. I'm definitely out on this one. That was way more. So I thought and they closed it. They hammered it at 260, and I thought I had lost it, because at this point I still didn't know if the person on the phone was a real person, a fake person, what was going on. Well, an hour later, I get a call from the auction house. Hey,
you're not going to believe this.
You're not going to believe this. But the second bidder was trying to renegotiate the deal with him. So the second bidder, I think, thought that there was the fake guy in the crowd bidding it up. Mm-hmm. Then when they tell him, okay, here's your fees, go ahead and start wiring, he's like, no. You guys were playing with me or something. I don't know. But then he started to try to negotiate with the auction house. Then they called me, and then that's when the deal was made, because the last thing that the auction house wanted to happen was this to fall through and not close. Because again, it's a real high profile item. And they had to save some face. So he said, look, I've got to write a check to the seller for $234,000. Will you do that? And I told him, I said, look, my budget was $100,000 on this thing. But here's what I will do. Because I had a plan in mind for it as well on how I can make the numbers work. I said, I've got 100 that I can give you, but you have to finance the rest of it. And he said, deal. Done.
Nice.
Yeah. I was like, and send me the wiring instructions. So that's how that worked out. Honestly, they were really, really great to work with. They really were. And I found out, because the whole time everybody had been telling me it was a phantom bidder on the other phone and stuff like that, because that is unfortunately common. But I found out it was a guy from the Netherlands somewhere that's a hardcore Elvis guy, and he has just got stupid money, and he would have spent this, and it would have been like couch cushion change for him.
How's he going to get the plane to the Netherlands?
He doesn't care.
Okay. He
Right?
just wants to own it.
He wanted to own it
in the U.S.
And that's what had happened so many times, because this plane, so the backstory of it is it was owned originally by the Morton Salt Company in 1962. That's when it was brand new. Then they owned it until 76 when Elvis bought it. Well, and then this is where some of the scam crazy stuff of his life comes in. December 76 was towards the end of his life. And it was right in the crazy part where he was kind of getting wrapped up into some fraud stuff with other people. And then shortly after that, it sold to the Sheikh of Saudi Arabia. And then it sold again and again to a real estate guy in California that scammed a whole bunch of people and ended up going to jail and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of stories here for you if you pick one of the owners. And then it eventually ended up at the McKay Oil Company in Roswell. That's how it ended up in Roswell. Well, he was the last one to fly it in 1983. Once he no longer was flying it, he finally sold it to somebody in like 1990 or 92 or something like that. It had traded hands like 5 or 6 more times until it got to the auction when I bought it. So this airplane had traded hands a bunch of times just because of the Elvis connection. Otherwise, this thing is not worth absolutely nothing except for the Elvis part. So anyway, I get the call. We strike a deal, and then starts my journey of going out to Roswell, figuring out how I'm going to get it from Roswell, New Mexico, all the way across the country to Florida. We cut the wings off of it. We cut the tail off of it, put it on a truck. And the truck driver, he's on his way back. And I was like, I wonder how far out of the way it is to go to Graceland. Because how cool would it be to take Elvis's jet to Graceland? So we were like, it's only 2 hours. I'm like, sweet, do it. And I'll meet you there. So I flew up. And this was on a Sunday. It was very last minute. We had no permission from anybody. And it's no surprise what happens next is they not politely asked us to leave as soon as we pulled in.
Well, how does that happen? So, I mean, did you pull in with the truck? Or
yeah.
So you're in the cab?
Well, so I met the truck driver there.
Okay.
So I had my own little airplane and I flew up. And then I met him there. He pulls in. I told him where to pull in too, because it's not a normal place that a semi truck would pull in. But also magically just happened to be the only place to turn around that size of a truck is the parking lot where the other 2 jets are.
Okay.
So I scouted it out first, and I'm like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pull into there and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, I pulled into the wrong one.
Right.
And then you're going to pull into this parking lot to turn around, and then you're just accidentally or purposefully going to stall the truck out and have to turn it off and get out and check something just long enough for us to get the shot of these 3 airplanes being, for the first time ever, in the same place at the same time. And that's exactly what happened. And then as soon as we stopped it, they were looking at it, checking it out, and then the security people came over and asked us to leave, and we're like, yep, all right, thanks so much, see ya. And then of course we took off.
Did you tell them, hey, this is Elvis's plane?
We tried to, yeah. So that was okay. There was one detail. The security people, they were kind of normal security people. They just, hey, okay, you got to be safe and got to get it out of here, whatever. Well, there was one guy in a white pickup truck, an older guy. He pulled up and he said, I know that jet, get it off of this property right now. Like, he was legitimately emotionally upset of even seeing that airplane. I'm like, what the heck is his deal? Like, why? I don't get it. Why is he so upset about this airplane being here? Well, I still don't know for sure, but I have a pretty good suspicion that it's because of everything around the end of Elvis's life that this jet was all tied into. And then, so once we got it from Graceland, we got it down to Florida. I spent the next 18 months converting it. So we set it on top of a motorhome chassis so we can drive it around. We drive it from the cockpit. The yoke is the steering wheel. The rudder pedals are the gas and the brake pedal. Everybody thinks it's a trailer, but it's not. We drive it.
Right.
And it's fully street legal. Everybody asks, how in the world did you do that? Well, a motorhome, the VIN number and the registration's tied to the chassis, not the house part. So all we did was do a small paint job to the house part, and maybe change the bumper. And of course, that's my official story, and that's what I'm sticking with. But yeah, it runs and drives.
It's got a tag.
Oh yeah, I mean it's fully licensed and insured. Yeah.
Okay.
So
cool.
we drove it. Our test drive was from Florida all the way to Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and we had to get it up there for a big air show that we took it to. But the inside is kept exactly the way it was because it's just amazing. It's like a time capsule in there. It's awesome. And the material, I don't know how much formaldehyde they used back then, but it must have been a lot because this stuff is still like brand new.
Do you have pictures? You can give us. You can send
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I was going to go on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean, there's
writing.
so we documented the entire process, so you can see there's 1,000, and if you just Google Elvis Jet, it's going to come up.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. The wildest part to me was before we cut the wings off, we plugged an external power unit into the airplane just to see if anything would turn on. Everything turned on. The TV turned on, the VCR, the microwave in the back, all the lights, everything turned on. I was shocked. And it was the first time in probably 40 years, 35 years that it had power to it. So it was just wild to me that everything turned on.
I mean, from the video I saw, all of the hands that it had exchanged hands. Did Elvis had it first, right? Like it was built by or it was first owned by I want to say saltwater
It is
company.
Morton Salt Company.
Oh, good. I got salt right.
Yeah, the salt. Yeah.
And then what? Elvis, he bought it from them, and obviously they didn't have it decked out the way he had it decked out, right? He must have had somebody come in and do all that stuff to it, right?
So here's the reality because it's a whole different world when I mean, I'm not part of this world, but from what I've seen from the outside and having a taste of it from the inside, once a person reaches a level of
success,
celebrity, or celebrityness, or prominence, this like a whole different world. And one thing they do with private jets is, they travel on them. Yes, most people don't travel with them like a car, so they don't have it just sitting there and all that. They usually are part of a network of things, so they lease them out, and it's a way that they reduce their taxes as well. So they have a big write-off, and if they lease it to other people, then now every time they fly it, they pay the lease fee, and it reduces their tax liability even further. So it's a gigantic big tax write-off is what these are. Something very common, and this is how I think that Elvis got wrapped up into all the fraud stuff, was there's these two guys. Now, and again, if you really want to search it, just look up Operation Fountain Pen, because the jet part was a smaller piece of a much bigger fraud that these guys were doing with international wires and frauds. And I mean, they were just, it's like evil genius is what it is, really. They knew the system well enough that they played the system, and they knew that this person doesn't, or this entity doesn't talk to this entity. Right. This banking financial institution doesn't talk to this one. They knew the loopholes in the rules, and they exploited them big time. And I mean, man, I think and this was 1977, they had over $2 billion in fraudulent transactions that they had done in their period of time. The Elvis Jet, I think, was tied to it. So what happened? Elvis's first plane was a Hound Dog 2, which is a Lockheed Jetstar. They had that for a while, flew around. Well, then he bought the bigger one, the Lisa Marie, which is a Convair 880, and that's the one with the bedroom and all that. Those two planes are sitting at Graceland. So then Vernon, his dad, or Colonel Tom Parker, the manager, and maybe some of the band, they would have flown the smaller jet to go back and forth or to go in front to set up the shows and stuff like that. Well, they got another one. So the Hound Dog 2, while it was sitting there not being used every day, they were approached by these who now we know the fraud guys, and they said,
the Hound Dog 2 the one you bought?
No, the Hound Dog 2 is still the one up in Memphis at Graceland.
Yeah, you said there's two in, that.
Yeah, there's two. There's the little one and the big one. Yeah.
Okay. What's the name of the one you bought?
It doesn't have one, and and I'll get to that here in just a second.
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
So and this is all in the FBI records. The Hound Dog 2, these guys approached them and said, hey, since it's not flying as much, how about you transfer it to this other company and we'll lease it back and give you a minimum monthly payment. And it'll be enough to cover your costs of holding it. And anytime you need it, just give us a call and you can use it anytime you want. Well, shoot, that sounds like a great thing. And we'll take care of all the maintenance. We'll take care of all the upgrades. We'll take care of everything for you. Just sign here. That's kind of how, in my mind, I see this deal going. And it's a common practice that you would lease airplanes out. So it wasn't something that was really off the wall. It just happened to be these two guys. So
who are these two guys?
It's Fred Pro and Phil Kitzer.
Pro and Kitzer.
Kitzer. Kitzer. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Pro and Kitzer.
Yeah.
Fred
and Phil.
Fred and Phil.
Sounds like...
They sound harmless.
Yeah.
Sound like they could be neighbors.
That's right.
Right? A couple of guys at the barbecue.
And so CNBC, how whatever that show was, the fraud show, they would always do Money something. What was that name?
American Greed.
American Greed, yes.
Yeah, I got a good episode for you. Yeah. It's called Matthew Cox.
Yeah, I was on. They did a 1 hour special.
Oh, they did. Yeah. It always starts as something rather insignificant, and then it hooks, and then it has to keep growing to keep up with the thing before, and it keeps growing before, and then it's just out of hand and it explodes. That seems exact the same pattern over and over and over again. And these two guys were the same deal.
So there's American Greed episode on these two guys.
No, I don't know about that.
No, he said it just seems.
But it's the same
like
pattern. Yeah, it's the same pattern where they started out doing one thing to cover. They're like, hey, wait, we can get a loan from the bank and we can cover our business expenses over here. And they go, well, crap, that didn't turn out to be enough, but we did it there. So now we're going to go here. And it just keeps growing. And then eventually...
It's a massive Ponzi scheme that collapses.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
It starts with just whiting out a little bit on a floor.
Yep.
And then it
grows. He's talking about mine.
That's Matt's story.
Okay.
Yeah. Started off small. It wasn't didn't think it was a big deal.
Yep.
So these guys, well, do we know who these guys are? Or we just know their names? That's it. We know their names and they were doing a scam. You don't know, do you know, did they work for a bank before, or they were just...
My understanding is the main guy, Fred Pro, I think he was the main guy. He was that was his thing, is just figuring out how to work the systems and to scam people. That's kind of just...
Scumbag.
It's kind of just his deal, right? So then this other guy, Phil Kitzer, I think he was the airplane guy, so he knew more about the aviation industry. And they had a shop, essentially, where they would do upgrades on airplanes and they would lease out airplanes and things like that. Again, very normal stuff. It's not anything unusual. The only difference is they said, well, you need to transfer the ownership of that airplane, the Hound Dog 2, into this LLC so that we can manage it better together. As soon as they did that, they took the jet for one, because they were going to do some maintenance on it. So they took the jet, and it's in the logs there with the FBI logs. He called from the phone on the jet. I told you, we got it. We have the Elvis's jet. And I guess it was like this inside bet between he and another, scammer thief guy. And I don't know, it was like $1 bet or something. And he eventually got the jet. So then once he got the jet, he flew it. I don't even know if he flew it. He just ended up going overseas to London or someplace like that. and went to a bank and said, hey, I need a loan and I have this jet that I can put up for collateral. So then the bank gave him the loan and, he offered the jet as collateral. Well, he doesn't care anything about the jet. Elvis gets stuck with that.
Right.
So then that gets tied up. So then Vernon and Elvis are kind of getting wise to what's going on because they start getting letters, hey, your loan payment's not being made. And he's like, what the heck are you talking about? So now they're starting to kind of sort of see what's going on. But I don't know if that was before or after they bought the jet that I have, because my jet is the same make and model as the Hound Dog 2.
Okay.
So that means that the pilots didn't have to do any extra training or licensing or insurance or anything. They could just hop right into this jet and fly it straight away. Now, there is one thing that tells me that my jet was purchased before they really knew about it, because in the records, the FAA records, they bought it December 22nd, and immediately they had the TV and entertainment system put in it. And those were done under the tenure of his ownership. And it was done under a different company. And I can't find the records enough to know who was behind the company that did it. But my suspicion tells me it was these guys.
Okay.
And then also around the same time when they found out is also when they sold the airplane. So I think this was another jet that was tied into that leaseback agreement. So what happened is they gave them the Hound Dog. They started making payments because most Ponzi schemes, you start getting some money up front to make sure everything's nice and neat. And they're like, man, this is working so great. Let's go get another airplane and do the same thing. So they went and got this second Jetstar, the one that I have. And then they gave it over to them and said, here, do the same thing again. Great. So now we're going to go do these upgrades to this airplane.
Well, real quick, how much are these planes brand new for Elvis to fork out? Is this like $1 million or $500,000 or?
Back in 76,
200,000.
he paid $840,000 for my plane.
Almost $1 million.
In 1976.
And then immediately transfers it to these guys.
Yeah. So
Wow.
there was a mortgage on it too from a bank. So he didn't just pay that money. He probably paid 20% of it or something. And then they got a mortgage for the rest of it to loan against it. But then I think all of this culminated together about the same time when all this started just falling apart.
So then letters start, he's got 2 of them with these guys. Letters start showing up saying you're not making your payment.
Yep.
He realizes, hey, wait a second, something's wrong.
Yep. And then he's not getting his money from the monthly, things again.
Right.
So now he's like, you know what? We're done. We got to sell the planes. And that's when I think my airplane was the first one to get sold. And I'd have to look at the records to see how much he sold it to the Sheikh of Saudi Arabia. But I think it was at a decent loss, but I think it was just to get rid of it. So then I discovered all of this way after I bought the jet.
You ever read a headline and think, wait, that's not what I read earlier? Or hear a story that was covered 2 totally different ways and think, I wonder which one's telling the truth. We all know the news can be biased. Algorithms push stories that they think you want to see, and some outlets spin stories to fit a certain agenda. It's exhausting trying to figure out what's real, what's exaggerated, and what's just straight up misinformation. That's why I use Ground News. It's a news platform that doesn't just show you the headlines. It shows you the whole story. It gathers articles from across the political spectrum, tells you the bias of each source, and even lets you compare how different outlets are framing the same event. For example, the recent federal health agency layoffs. Left-leaning news described the layoffs as a major crisis, calling them a bloodbath that could harm important public health work like tracking diseases. On the other hand, right-leaning news saw the layoffs as positive change. They called it a win-win for taxpayers, which could save $1.8 billion a year. Both sides agree the layoffs and changes were happening, but they strongly disagree on what it meant. Ground News lets you compare these side by side so you can actually see the bias and decide for yourself what to believe. You can also see things like how news sources are covering a particular story, political leaning of news outlets, and the blind spot feed where you can see stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. In a world of clickbait and echo chambers, having access to all perspectives is more important than ever. That's why I love Ground News. It helps me cut through the noise and stay truly informed. And right now you can get 40% off the Vantage plan for unlimited access. Just hit the link in my description, ground.news/inside, and start seeing the news differently today.
I discovered all of this way after I bought the jet because I started just immediately becoming into Elvis's little life, and that hole is deep, and it gets weirder and weirder the more I learn about it. Go in, and I started learning about this Operation Fountain Pen because the whole time I kept trying to think, why in the world did he own this other jet that was the exact same thing as that one? I couldn't figure it out. And why only for a short period of time? Because it was like 5 months is all that he ever owned this jet. It was always confusing to me. Well, then I started putting some of the pieces together. I'm like, holy crap. This was a jet that was tied into all that fraud stuff that they got defrauded by. I also learned there was 2 undercover FBI agents that were part of this Fred Pro and Phil Kitzer group, and one of them's still alive today, and he still talks about it.
Okay.
So I haven't been able to set up the interview, but maybe we can work together on that, because I would love, he's in San Diego, I would love to get him to do an interview in the Elvis jet to try to figure out, put some of these pieces together.
We gotta get Tyler on it.
Oh yeah.
Tyler will find it. He'll find him and
Oh, he's got his phone number and everything. I've emailed him back and forth. We just can't get our schedules together.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I would love to get that guy.
That would be interesting. If we want to.
How old is he? He's got to be pretty.
He's
70s
at least, yeah.
At least,
because he was early 20s when he was undercover.
Is he all still there?
Seems to be.
Okay.
Yeah, seems to be.
Well, some people hold up better than others.
Yeah. So yeah, it was wild, and then a lot of people, when I bought it, they're like, "Oh, I can't believe you got scammed out of that, and the auction played you and stuff like this." I'm like, "It's the game.
Yeah.
It's all part of the game." And I knew my budget, so I can back up to that and how I justify that. I knew that this airplane would never fly again.
Yeah.
But I also knew that it was so well preserved inside, it needed to be shared with as many people as possible around the world.
All right.
The only way that we could share this is to make it mobile on the road.
Because you don't own a museum.
I don't own a museum.
Right.
Well, it doesn't matter. Even if you did, it's not a significant enough of an airplane that people would go out of their way to go see. Because it was like Elvis's redheaded stepchild,
Yeah.
kind of airplane. It wasn't his major one that he used a lot. Or honestly, however, if he ever flew on this one, I don't know. But the inside is just absolutely fantastic. So I knew I had to make it mobile. Well, I have a YouTube show, and so we got to do things crazy and big. So the best way to do that is to drive it. And I had learned I'm not the first one to do this with an airplane. Mm-hmm. So there are other drivable airplanes out there. And I called one of the guys up, and he says, it's actually a lot easier than you think it is because of the size of it. And I'm going to make it sound a lot easier than it was. But where the landing gear comes out, we just took some steel and made a bracket and bolted it directly to the top of the motorhome chassis because it's all just flat, the frame is.
Yeah.
And in the back where the wings go across, it has big, beefy structures under there. We literally just bolted that straight down to the motorhome frame, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it's not like it's not like you need a lot of support. The plane supports itself. It's already built. It's already got all the
correct
skeletal structure in there to support itself.
That's correct.
You just got to hook it down to the chassis, right?
Yeah, and
what kind of engine do you guys?
It was a diesel pusher motorhome.
Okay,
so it was like a Cummins 5.9.
Still, you have to hook up. You have to figure out how to get the pedal. Like that's
that's the trick. So the gas, and this is a motorhome. And so they use a lot of different size motorhomes, a lot of different everything. So everything's very modular. The gas pedal is a fly-by-wire. It has 3 wires that connect to the side of the gas pedal, and that's it. So we could mount it on the ceiling if you wanted to, and it would still work fine. So we just mounted it right there. The brakes, it's air brakes. So it's flexible plastic tubing that goes around. So all you got to do is just route the tubing and then plug it in, extend it or whatever you're going to do, bolt it down. So brakes and gas are done. Transmission is just a little box with 3 buttons on it. And it's all just a wire. So you just mount that wherever you want it to and then plug it in. That's it. It's all plug and play. The toughest thing was the steering because that's the only physical connection. Mm-hmm. Now, in serendipitously, I still call it God's sense of humor, everything on the motorhome lined up perfectly with the jet. So the steering box was directly under where it had to go up to go into the cockpit. And then we just put a 90-degree bevel thing on it to turn it from going up to out where the yoke was. And that was it. It lined up. It was on the right side. It was the right width, everything. So it was crazy. And the door opens exactly center over the front tire. I mean, it's wild how well it all lined up and worked.
Stresses me out just listening to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Like thinking, how am I gonna figure this out?
Dude, we had no idea. And here's the wild part. 6 months before I ever knew about the Elvis Jet coming up for auction, somebody donated this motorhome to my nonprofit to be used for like veterans and things like that. Well, this motorhome had sat under the bushes for like 9 years. It was just an
You didn't know what you were going to do with
it
it?
was a disaster of a motorhome. And we tried to save it. We had to spend some money to get it going and stuff like that. But the house part of it was just a disaster. It leaked everywhere. The slide didn't work. It was mold and wood was rotted and all kinds of stuff. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with this thing. But the one good part about it was all the chassis stuff. The engine, transmission, the drivetrain was all solid as a rock. So we took it and parked it out there. And I'm like, no way. We measured it. We're like, this is nuts. I can't believe this actually works. And we had to do zero modification to make it work.
So you said you got kicked out of Graceland twice.
Yeah, twice.
So I'm assuming the next time you pull up,
yeah.
got to
So
get another picture.
After we finish on our test drive from Florida to Wisconsin, right in the middle is Memphis. We drive up, and this time I tried to call them a few weeks in ahead to do like a meet and greet there, or, make an event out of it to drive people to Graceland and stuff. What I learned is that Graceland is an extremely corporate organization now. It is like trying to deal with Pepsi or the NFL or something like that. It only happens by committee, and then it's just a huge bunch of red tape and bureaucracy. They never...
But not if you just pull in.
Well, sometimes life is you ask for forgiveness and permission.
Yeah.
And I knew our time frame. We had at least 10 minutes. So then it was a motorhome at this point, though, and they do have a motorhome entrance. So I was like, well, we'll just pull in and be a motorhome. And then to get my shot, I'll accidentally go, because the motorhome entrance is here and the airplanes are at the next turn.
Right.
And I'll just miss my motorhome entrance and have to pull in the same one to turn around. Well, we pull in, we talk to the guard at the gate, and we're like, hey, can we enter and pay to park and all that? They're like, yeah, this is great. This is cool. Wow. Can I see inside? And I mean, everybody loved it. Everybody absolutely loved it. They had us park over there. We were opening it up. All the people were coming out, the security and all this time was coming out, and they were just absolutely having the best time of their life. Well,
except for that guy in the truck.
The guy in the truck showed up again, and he was irate. He never said it to me. He never made it to me, but he came up, and it was the same thing again. He said, I told you I don't ever want to see that on this property again. And then he ended up firing the security guard that let us in.
Oh, what a dick. How old is this guy?
So I think he was an older guy.
Was he around when Elvis was?
I think he knows about all the fraud stuff and that this jet was tied into it. And so he is connecting that jet back to the fraud stuff that was during a really dark period of Elvis's life. So I don't know if he was one of the Memphis Mafia guys or his friends or worked for him at the time or something like that, but he's very protective over Elvis. And I think just seeing the jet again brought up and reminded him of the fraud stuff. And, that was right before he died too. So I don't know if he made a connection to all the stress with all the FBI stuff and all the financial stuff going on that, if this jet was part of all that stress during that time of his life. So I think that's my hunch I think that guy knew about all this fraud stuff and he knew about the jet. And then he connected that and he just said, he never wants to see that jet again.
Did you pull in and get pictures next to the other jets?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. I thought you were still in the RV park when he showed up.
No. Yeah, that was our turnaround point.
Did you get your money back for the fee? So I want my money back. We'll leave, but I need my money back.
So here's the justification that the guy used to fire that girl. I gave her my credit card, and she said, no, this is so cool. And she never charged us to come in.
Oh.
And even at the time, I was thinking to myself, girl, you need to charge us.
Yeah.
But she was like, no, come on in. I'm like, this is not going to go well. I was like, you need to charge us.
At this time, are you aware of the fraud associated with this plane? Or what?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't.
Yeah.
Was I?
At the time, are you wondering, like, is this guy just a dick?
Yeah,
Like,
no, I don't think I knew at this time. I just couldn't figure out. I'm like, what the heck? And I think because of his reaction is what led me to dig even deeper into this, why somebody would hate this so much. I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason that this guy is all upset.
So my question is, the two fraudsters, you're saying Elvis got the planes back, both planes, right?
Well, not for a while. So
Okay.
yeah, there was lawsuits and other things, and he didn't get the planes back until after. You know what? It might have not even been until after he passed away, because it was right at the same time he passed away that this went to trial.
See, I'm wondering what happened to the two con men.
They got they went in jail for like 20-some years.
Oh, that's a lot. Back then, there was like a fraud was like a slap on the hand. 5 years, or well, I guess they'd give you like 20, and then
this
they
is
had parole
this is
and
Bernie
stuff.
Madoff level though.
Yeah. So
And they ripped off people that had power, so they were going to get their pound of flesh.
So there was a trial for them, or they just get caught and plead guilty?
It was a mix.
Okay.
So the two undercover FBI agents, they came into an airport, arrested everybody, and then you just have to go back and read the reports. They went to trial. He pled guilty to some things. There was...
They consolidate them. They drop some charges. You plead guilty to this.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering if there's a documentary on this whole thing.
They've been trying to do a movie about the fountain pen. Going back to the financial side of it and why I could justify paying as much as I did is because I knew we'd never use the wings, so we cut the wings up into little memorabilia pieces and had them laser engraved and serial numbered, and I mean it's Elvis memorabilia. Yeah, so we sell them, and they're not cheap. They're $300 and something bucks, and then $500 for the lower serial numbered ones. And I knew that all I had to do was sell 1,000 of these things to break even.
Mm-hmm.
And so far we've sold over 500. And I'm still in the aviation world. I haven't even tapped into the Elvis world yet.
Right.
So as soon as we hit that, I mean, we should be able to at least break even on this project. And we're able to raise some money for some good organizations. So it's just a super great win for everybody.
So are you, the pieces, are you just cutting up like a piece of metal, or are you cutting off, is it like a slice of the wing itself?
No, yeah. So think of it like a big keychain. So they're about 3 inches long, 1.5 inch oval-ish. And they have a laser engraved etch of the jet, and then they say Jetstar owned by Elvis Presley, and then a serial number.
Okay.
And they come with a certificate of authenticity and the bill of sale showing when Elvis bought it, to make it
Official.
Yeah, memorabilia style. Because Elvis is, man, there's no other person on the planet that this would have worked with.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah. He's got a huge, so that this woman filed like a mortgage on Elvis on Graceland recently after is it Priscilla Presley passed away, and she filed a mortgage.
Lisa Marie,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Lisa Marie passed away, and then this woman tried to foreclose on Graceland.
Yep.
I mean, I did a bunch of videos or interviews on that. I mean, just insanity. Like I mean, I hate to say this, but the balls that it took. Stupid, you got caught. But the balls it took to think that you were going to. I mean, it's really delusional. Really, what's so funny is, had she pulled it off, it wouldn't have been delusional. But I guess she thought she was going to take advantage of the confusion that was going on, but she's probably going to go to prison for a while. But she got close. Like, if they hadn't gone in, they were about to foreclose, and they went in with an injunction and said, "Hey, she never borrowed any money. There is an actual lien on the property, but I could go find your address, type up any type of a lien, and go file it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to stick, But for them, it stuck, and they started the foreclosure process. And had they not been paying attention, they probably would completely foreclose. And then can you imagine you're walking up saying, no, we lent X amount of dollars. We foreclosed. You guys didn't show up. Nobody fought it. They were hoping to take advantage of that confusion after her death. So, but I guess it was her granddaughter, right? Her granddaughter that came in and found out about it and hired somebody and
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Just imagine that same scenario happening 10 times a day while he was alive. That's what it was. It was absolutely.
What do you mean? There's just all kinds of frauds.
Oh my
going
gosh,
on?
everywhere. Yeah, because he is the highest, number one, biggest celebrity on the planet. It pulls out all the crazies from everywhere.
Yeah.
So then imagine that same crazy, foreclosing on a house or finding this or trying to do this or scaling a fence to get a piece of his grass or something. I mean, it's just people are insane.
Yeah.
And I can totally believe the other conspiracy about him faking his own death, and he's a preacher in Alabama now. So, I mean, I get it. Like, if I was him, I'm like, this is insane. I just want to live in peace. And so in order to do that, I have to, kill Elvis, no longer be Elvis ever again. I'm like, that's a proposition I would consider.
Have you ever heard all those conspiracies?
No.
Oh, Bob Joyce, man. Oh, yeah. It's on.
There's multiple rumors and there's multiple movies where, like, in the movie they'll find Elvis, or they're alluding to it, or I forget what. There was one with I can't remember her name, but there was some kind of an elixir that you could drink that would make you young forever. And in that, they have a party of all the people that have drank the elixir. And so they're basically saying, look, you can drink the elixir and your best bet is to fake your own death. And then later when they have a party, Elvis is there,
Oh, I believe it. I'm in.
It's a constant rumor that's going around that Elvis is still alive. He faked his own death, and he just kind of, because he wanted to live a simple life somewhere. It was just got to be too much.
Oh, yeah. And again, the more that I look at his life, the more I believe that to be a very possible scenario.
Well, you were saying towards the end, it got super dark. What do you mean?
Well, with the drugs and with all the debt that Colonel Tom Parker had put on him, because Colonel Tom Parker had I think, and I'm sure the people in the comments will correct me on this, but a 50% ownership over Elvis.
Right.
So everything that Elvis brought in, he got 50%, and he had gambling debts that were insane to all these mafia people that ran Las Vegas and New Jersey and other places. So as he's out there betting, he's even saying, hey, I'm going to bet more than I have right now because I know Elvis is here and he'll bring it in eventually.
Right.
So he's just this little, golden goose that keeps producing these eggs, and he's just abusing the snot out of that relationship. And I could get it. That's performance all the time. And then he stays up late. You're all jazzed up after your performance, so they give him drugs to, get him to sleep. And then he's got to get up to be Elvis again. So
More
give him drugs to get him up, and then drugs to go back. I mean, that is a horrific way to live.
Well, I mean, it eventually catches up to you, right?
Yeah. So whether it really did happen,
whether it did or didn't,
also could make sense too, because, that's brutal.
So they're kicking you out of Graceland for the second time.
Yeah, so the same guy came up, and he's like, I don't ever want to see that airplane on this property again. And we're like, all right, I guess it's time to keep heading north.
you didn't see. To me, I'd be like, why? I need to know why.
Well, he never approached me directly.
Oh, okay.
He always went through the security people. He
Okay.
said, tell them to get that thing off right there. But I saw him pull up, and he never even got out of the truck. He just went over, and everybody was like, oh, no, so-and-so's here. And I don't remember his name. They never mentioned his name. But apparently this guy in an old beat-up truck had some pull in the community there on Graceland.
I got to know who.
Yeah, I know. I don't know who it was either.
I gotta call the police. We got to know who. I'm not leaving until I find out who that guy is and what the actual reason is.
Yeah.
And the police show up and they say, "Oh, you got to leave." No, not leaving. I need to know.
Yeah, right.
Get him out here.
That would have made a better video. Tow it.
Yeah, like I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to get arrested.
Yeah.
Like I'll go in,
Right.
come right back out. I'm good.
Still be a video.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
no,
still-
no. See, okay,
One more
no,
trip.
Yeah.
no, I still want to stay in the good graces or as best we can, because what I have learned about Elvis is the guy truly was a big heart. He cared about everybody he ever came across. He wanted to see people taken care of, and because of his generosity, he got taken advantage of.
I was going to say,
a
that's always
lot.
the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, his reputation, his legacy is pretty awesome. And I want to be one that promotes the best parts of Elvis and not all, the double-edged sword on the other side where it was taken advantage of and some people did that. So that's why we've chosen to do what we have with the Jet. And but it makes for, I mean, it's just wild, the stuff.
So now you have to, where is it now?
Here in Plant City.
It's out front.
Yeah. I mean, we drive it, all the time, and but it's here just outside Tampa. We leave it in storage places, and we have it going around. So
I was going to say, I drop off my kids with it every day, pick them up. They'd be,
I was thinking about that. You know how epic that would be.
yes.
And we have the Elvis sunglasses with the sideburns. Those are required eyewear whenever you're piloting the Elvis Jet.
Do you need a speaker that plays, you got to have speakers that plays this music.
Oh yeah, Bluetooth speaker that goes right there off your phone. Got a playlist that rocks it out. And the electric stairs all still work. So you come out, it's full rock star status. You open the door, whoosh, and the stairs go, and then you can step out.
So if the FBI officer that talks about, if you go and meet with him in San Diego, are you going to drive the...
No, heck no. That's a long way to drive that thing.
How long would that take? That'd be at
Forever.
least a week or two, right?
Yeah, you can.
But you can't drive it like a normal.
Yeah.
You're not making the same kind of time. As a
No, it's
normal
because of
car.
everybody else. It drives 70 miles an hour down the highway, no
Right.
problem. It's everybody else.
It's still a bus. Like it's like
So-
you're not. You're saying it's not a sports car.
you're
I
You're
mean,
still-
it's like a motorhome.
once you get on the interstate, you're good.
No, it's all the other
are just
people.
what are they just?
They're
looking?
freaking it's crazy.
Taking pictures.
We have cameras that are on it all the way around for
Right.
side view, the front, back, and everything. And we always watch the monitor. We stay in the right lane and we watch the left camera because you can see a car go past, the brakes come on, the window come down, and the phone come up.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Have you seen those videos
yeah.
on social media?
Yeah, it's fun. So they'll come out, and we have a QR code on the side of it that sends people directly to the video of the build and
Right.
the buying and everything, so they can see. Because if you drove past it, you wouldn't immediately know it was Elvis Presley's. We're still trying to figure out how to do that to where people are like, wait, Elvis Presley? But it's just this crazy airplane that's driving down the road, which is wild enough. And then once they find out it's Elvis's, like it goes, real big crazy. So yeah, all the people driving slow and getting in front of us. Some of people will go up, takes the next exit, and get on the overpass and watch us go by. I mean, it's wild. It's just a traffic jam moving down the road. It is.
What about getting pulled over? Do you get pulled over?
Everybody is asked that. We had a bet how many times we'd get pulled over on the first 1,658 mile drive from Tampa to Wisconsin, and we got pulled over a total of 0 times.
Okay.
I think what happens is the police, whenever they see that going by, they just go, too much paperwork.
Yeah. Like God forbid something is wrong.
It's not worth it. Yeah. And we built it to be DOT compliant with bumper sizes and turn signals and headlights because we knew at some point we're going to get a cop checking this thing out.
Right.
If nothing else, because he just wants to check it out and
Yeah.
see how cool it is. But I know at some point there's going to be some cop is going to really look this thing over.
So, sorry, I've been making notes throughout. Have we completed the whole entire fraud story? Do we kind
Well,
of know?
he's
Or-
doesn't. I mean, he knows that eventually there was an FBI investigation. Elvis is a small part. The planes are a small part. So eventually
of
there
this
was.
Can you,
bigger.
yeah, I guess if we've already kind of covered it, can you dumb it down for me, actually, but or the audience? Whoever
Right.
like dumb it down to how the kind of fraud works or how you think they were doing it.
There's multiple time. There's
And
multiple.
there's a lot of layers.
Yeah, there's
to it.
layers.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's what I was
yeah.
gonna say. Sub stories that are going on at the same time, but
Yeah.
really just the fraud.
So you have the bigger umbrella Operation Fountain Pen, and that covers international banking and all kinds of different ways to launder money.
from
Is
these
essentially
from these two knuckleheads.
from a group of, I forget how many fraudsters there were, but the two guys were the main guys running it.
What were their names again?
Fred Pro and
You had a good memory.
Kitzler,
Yeah.
Phil Kitzner. Yeah,
Fred and-
because I've studied this stuff so much. It was like, as soon as I saw it again, I'm like, that's right. And so it was a bigger fraud going on. And then underneath of that fraud is one of the pillars was this airplane stuff they were doing. And that's the section that Elvis and this jet, I believe, is tied into, is revolved around taking these airplanes, changing the ownership, and then using them for loans and collateral to get other loans. And they would do that multiple places around the world. So they go to this bank and get a loan on it here. They go to this bank, get a loan on it here, and just have multiple loans on the same collateral.
I can't believe anyone would do that.
Is that
That is wrong, fundamentally wrong, ethically and morally.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming is that what your stuff was?
That's one of the things. Yeah, but I would buy a house, satisfy the mortgages on the house, and then I would go to multiple banks and borrow money on the same house so quickly that the banks couldn't figure out that, because there's a time lag when you're filing documents. But I was gonna say, I gotta stop saying that. I've got to say,
You know, I've thought about mentioning it. I don't think it's an issue, but
Jeff said it's an issue.
Yeah.
Jeff said stop. So you do it.
I've never
all
seen
the time.
anybody else.
Nobody
comment that,
said it,
though.
but I
The
no. I was gonna say.
yes.
I've
Mine is so.
yeah. Well, yeah. I think so is. I think everybody kind of does that.
Yeah.
Like and so.
Yeah,
I hate that so
Yeah.
much.
but it's so hard to stop.
It
The
is.
crutch words. I got a crutch phrase. So, these guys. What's so funny about that is that it's the. I hate to say it, the best scams, but the best scams are the ones where it's a normal practice. So when you explain it to somebody, they're like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then you always think like, "Yeah, I'll sign over my $800,000+ jet that I just paid for and I own, or maybe I have a mortgage on it. I'll sign it over to you, which gives you now to have the asset, and then you turn around and go borrow money against from multiple different banks." Because that's something that people signing over their jet for you to lease out is may or may not be. I don't really know if the signing over to you is a normal practice. But it is. Jeez. So you sign it over, but you think, okay, but that's what everybody does. Everybody buys all these rich people buy a jet, and then they're like, okay, I only use it twice or 3 times a month, and I'm only flying one place and coming right back. I use it for 2 days. I got it for 4 days a month. Why shouldn't I make money leasing it out to corporations that need to fly around, executives or whatever, but they don't want to spend $800,000 or now would probably be 5 million or 10 million. So they don't want to do that. So this is a very common thing, and because it's common, when they explain it to Elvis or whoever, they're apt to go, "Wow, what a bargain!" And this is a company, and you think, well, I don't know, Elvis, this seems kind of sketchy. Well, wait a minute.
Nobody ever says it's sketchy.
Right, but think about it too. It would sound sketchy. It's like, I don't know. I could see saying it's sketchy, but for the fact that they've had this company for years. Like if it was sketchy, it would have caught up. But that's the whole thing about a Ponzi scheme. The longer the Ponzi scheme runs and the more people know it, then the more people are willing to invest. Why? It's been around for 15 years. This is a Ponzi scheme. It's been around. This financial institution's been around for 15 years, and it's Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
The guy was, like, oh, what are you talking about? Can't be a scam. How dare you? You sign over, and then all your other buddies are leasing their jets. Yeah, Tom does it, and then of course if they said Elvis leases us 2 jets, that probably got him 4 more jets.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? It just it blossoms into this massive thing, and then eventually when it collapses, somebody goes to jail for 20 years. But I wonder, I'll bet you those guys' stories of how that whole thing started for them and what they were doing with the money and what their thought process is. I'll bet that's a fascinating story. I mean, not that I'm saying they're good.
I've
They're scumbags,
seen
obviously.
a couple of interviews with the one guy because he served his time and then got out. I don't remember which one it was, but I think they have interviews that are out there somewhere. I don't think either one of them are still alive.
Still,
but
the interview would be cool to throw the interview.
The interview is still out there.
It'd be, a little portion of this jerk off saying, "Well, we did that." But the other thing that is interesting is that at that time period, right, in the 70s, 80s, like there was a portion of time in the 60s, 70s, and 80s up until 86 when the federal guidelines and the federal guidelines changed. You heard the term club fed, right? So there was a time when people would say, "Oh, they got a slap in the wrist," and what's so funny is you'd read like what someone got, like, "Oh, this banker stole $100 million and this whole pension fund collapsed and all these people aren't going to have retirement anymore. Like, it's a horrible situation." And then you'd hear them, "Okay, he got 10 years." And you go, "What a slap on the wrist." Well, no, it's worse than that. He only has to do, at that time, not now, but at that time, he had to do 65%. And at 1/3, he was eligible for parole. And keep in mind, you're you're a nonviolent person.
Yeah.
So when you're saying, "Oh, he got 20 years," I'm thinking he got 20 years. He probably was out of there in 6 or 7. Because let's face it, if a white collar criminal comes up for parole, he typically gets it. Why? I'm nonviolent.
That's true. Yeah.
And you're going to have I'm going to have a parole officer watching me, and he's going to make sure I don't work at a bank. He's going to make sure that I'm stocking shelves at Walmart. So I'm harmless now, as opposed to a guy who's doing home invasions. You're like, "Nah, you're not getting out at 1/3 your time. You're going to do a little bit more." So that guy with 20 years probably got out at 6 or 7. And then,
interesting.
He's on probation forever, of course. That's back when they would have these probations that were just outrageous. Well, he would be on probation till, if he didn't violate, he'd be on probation for 65% of the original sentence. So he still would have been, he'd had another 6 years or 7 years of probation. So, but that, in the end, this is the other thing. You remember, Mike Hudson? Remember Mike Hudson, the biker guy?
Yeah.
Mike Hudson is a guy that in the 70s and 80s was in federal prison. And so he's somebody that I've met and I had heard how federal prison was at that time, but this guy actually did 2 different bids. And I mean, he just makes it sound like I want to go. Like, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. I mean, we're talking about, Barbara Walters this is what ruined that system. Barbara Walters did and I want to say it was 60 Minutes, where she goes into a federal camp. This is in the 80s. And she interviews multiple prisoners. And these are all white collar guys. And it's so funny because back then it was so vastly different than like when I went to prison. The guards wore, and matter of fact, if you see if you go and watch Goodfellas, if you watch the movie Goodfellas, when his wife comes to see him, the guards are dressed in like business outfits. They have like nice jackets on. They didn't call you like, "Hey, inmate," or Cox or whatever. It was like, "Mr. Cox." Excuse me, Matt, Mr. Cox, come here. Hey, listen, you're like, they treated you. The big thing was you have to be respectful. The other thing was the food was amazing. These guys were talking, and when Barbara Walters does this thing, and they called it Club Fed, and that's what ruined. Like, after that hit, Congress had committees put together. They're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, and during one of the things, they're talking to one of the guys. And they're like, "Well, what's food like here?" He's like, "On such and such, we get steak and this, and we get that. We used to get like lobster, and we would have lobster once or twice a week, but that doesn't really happen as much as it used to. And it was really good too, because it's not great, but I mean, and he's having this conversation with her, not even realizing she's looking at him like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Yeah.
He's oblivious. In his mind, keep on, this is a banker who thinks this is how prison is, right? Like my punishment is I'm not allowed to leave this area, but I should be treated very well and eat very well. These guys are playing golf. They're playing tennis. And so
Good night. You know that there was some politicians and bankers on the board of.
well, that's what their concern. That was probably their concern.
100%.
I may end up here.
Yeah.
It needs to be nice.
Yeah, that's right.
So after that was aired, people were so furious about it that they changed the whole system. And the other thing they did was the Bureau of Prisons said that's the last time a camera comes in. Like all inmates will tell you, oh, who ruined it? Barbara Walters ruined it for us. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
now
she went on a bad list.
Yeah, for prisoners. But that's why whenever I talk to these guys, these production people, they're like, and I'm trying to option, let's say, the life rights to somebody. I've written a bunch of true crime stories. I know you don't know anything about my story, but while I was incarcerated, I wrote a bunch of guys' stories, and I've optioned multiple stories. And so sometimes I'll get a producer, and he's like, I love this story. I'd love to turn this into a documentary. And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. And they're like, why? I'm like, well, the guy's still in prison. He's got 10 more years. And they'll say, oh, well, we can interview him in prison. It would be even better. I'm like, nah, you're not going to be able to interview him in prison. They go, no, we get cameras in all the time in prison. And I'm like, not a federal prison, you don't. And they're like, no, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. I can. I'm like, yeah, I understand, bro. And then
Prison.
2 months later, they come back and they're like, yeah, it turns out we can't get a camera in the federal prison.
Interesting.
Yeah. Listen, they're done. Like the Bureau of Prisons went through such hell. They were like, absolutely not, never again. They ambushed them, and everybody was pulled in front of Congress. You're giving these guys lobster and steak. Like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah. Interesting. Well, there you go. So I guess it paid to go to federal prison in the 70s and 80s.
Yes, but so after 86, that changed, and so like those guys. Even though you're like, I'm sure the headlines, 20 years, like, oh, they threw the book at him. These guys had money socked away somewhere or whatever. They were probably like, I'm going to do 6 years in Club Fed. It's not going to be that bad. And hell, I might even be in 5 years, I might even be in a halfway house somewhere, you know? So, I mean, listen, for $5 or $10 or $20 million, I'll do 5 years. Most people will. Listen, and I'll say this right now.
True.
In the comment section, let me know if you do what for $1 million a year, would you go to prison right now?
To the Club Fed one, maybe.
Oh, the Club Fed for sure. Oh, no, guys will be like, hell yeah,
Can I sign up for that now?
I'll do it for $250.
Yeah, we had a TikTok. I forgot. It was 3 years for like $5 million. And everyone was going in the comments. Saying,
Yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah, and that back then too, these guys are, and keep in mind too, like the guards are respectful. Everybody's respectful. You're eating good. And you talk to Mike. Mike was like, and you could get a job working in like the factory, and they paid you like a regular wage. So guys are walking out of prison with $10,000 from working for the last year or two. So, you know, and they were eating amazing, and they had weights they could work out. They don't have any of that stuff now. So those guys that, you know, they probably wasn't so horrible after all. They probably thought it was horrible. Everybody doesn't. Everybody thinks it's horrible.
It's weird. As soon as I started getting into the jet side of things, like, that's a whole different life. The people that are on that other side, it's a whole different world.
What do you mean?
Well,
like they're just
so no. With the Elvis one, I kind of knew that one was already had the makings of being weird. But then I recently purchased a Learjet, same abandoned kind of thing, and it was repossessed by the government. They sold it for tax evasion type stuff, and then I come to find out more about the organization behind it and what they're doing. It was like international arms dealers and just wild stuff. That it's like, is everybody that owns a private jet, is it like the TV stuff for real? You know what goes on? It's like, what is this?
My wife worked for a company that manages yachts.
I bet there would be some wild stuff too.
And listen, one of the guys is an international arms dealer.
See?
And
he's probably the same guy that I got the jet from.
He has the biggest in downtown Tampa in the Harbor Island, where they've got a bunch of these things at the whatever they call them, docks or piers. The last one that he bought was so massive they almost couldn't even park it. They almost couldn't even bring it in. Like, I mean, it's probably a foot or two off the ground. I mean, or off the bottom of the.
Wow, how deep it is!
Ocean. It's massive, and you look at this thing. I mean, this thing is huge. I think it might have a helicopter pad on it. I mean, it is. You know, and this
it's like a cruise ship.
Yeah, this guy's just. I can only imagine. So there was a whole thing for arms. I think he may have put it on, where he put on this huge thing downtown for arms. You got guys driving around in boats with guns.
I remember, it was a couple years ago, and they had the military do drills and helicopters and come down and do stuff.
It was insane, and I'm pretty sure that was all him. I know Jess. She was down there for it, and she's like, "You've got to come down." I was like, "I can't." Like we had a podcast. I was like, "Yeah, I can't," but you know, so
that's wild.
Yeah. And I actually wrote a book. For a guy named Ephraim Deveroli. Did you ever see the movie War Dogs?
Yeah, why is that? That's familiar.
Jonah Hill plays Ephraim Deveroli,
and Miles Teller.
He plays David Packhouse. So these are two Jewish kids from Miami that are basically like stoners. And it's funny because whenever I would say that to Deveroli, he'd go, "I'm more of a cokehead." So. But it played better for him being a stoner for the movie. So, but they ended up getting into multiple government contracts, but they got one for $300 million to supply munitions to the Afghani security forces, right? That the U.S. government pays for.
Yeah.
And they were buying and shipping tons of munitions. And anyway, they get in trouble because they start buying from. Oh God, Albania, is it? I want to say Albania. I might have it wrong, but I think it was Albania. The problem was initially the Albanians were selling them 7.62 rounds that are made in Albania, but then they start giving them Chinese because China had gifted Albania tons of 7.62 rounds, and they're sealed in these hermetic canisters. So they're shipping that, but at some point they realize, hey, these are Chinese. Like, because of Tiananmen Square, we're not supposed to be selling anything that's Chinese. Now, of course, Deveroli felt like, he said, but this was gifted prior to that Tiananmen Square. So he was like, I think I'm good, but you know what? Just in case, let's repackage.
Oh, no.
And they were already in repackaging anyway because they were in these big wooden crates. And so he's like, we were already doing it. They just went the extra step of removing everything that was, and they were fully aware that initially they weren't aware what they were doing was wrong. Now you are aware.
Yeah.
And we went even a step further. And so as a result of that, they were filling out the the documentation incorrectly. And so once the government figured it out, they came after them, even though they were supplying. It's really a touchy. It's questionable because I don't think they should have been charged. I mean, Deveroli, without a doubt, is a scumbag. He's a complete asshole. But you can't send people to prison for being assholes. You should maybe in some cases, but he didn't break the law,
right?
And but the government just decided, you know what? We don't like these guys. They make us look bad. They're shipping Chinese. We questionable. They were hiding it, so we're going to go ahead and charge them with. And it was basically mislabeling the export documents.
Yeah,
we mislabeled it.
Always, yeah.
And of course, they're saying, okay, it says where's it coming from? It's coming from Albania. That's what we put. They're like, yeah, but it was Chinese. It's like, there's no place to put where it was manufactured. It's saying where's it being shipped from? Albania.
Yeah.
And he's like, what am I supposed to say? You knew. He's like, so it's and then it's like, if that's what you believe, go to trial. Well, you can't go to trial because there's tons of emails and stuff where these guys are discussing, like, how do we make sure you get rid of all this? Make sure you fill out the thing this, make sure you don't put this, make sure nobody says Chinese. So it's like, obviously you're covering something up, but you're covering something up that's not a crime.
Right.
Because it was gifted prior to the...
It's saving face that can be construed as committing a crime.
And let's face it, if you're sitting at that chair, the people in the jury box already think you're guilty. Why? Well, you've already been indicted.
Yeah.
I've actually had a juror for one of my guys, or a buddy of mine in prison, where during voir dire, when they questioned the jury, they went to, they were questioning them, and they got to this one juror, you think you can find him, wait and see the evidence to determine whether he's guilty? You think you could be impartial? And he said, not really. And they went, why? And he goes, well, he was indicted on 45 counts of fraud. He did something.
Right.
And it was like, and I remember my buddy, which his name's Andrew Levinson. Andrew, I was like, wow. I was like, what a jerk. He goes, no, I appreciated that. He said, everybody else is lying. Mm-hmm. He just said what everybody else is thinking.
Well, sure.
Right.
100%. You've already got your bias in place.
Right. He said everybody else is like, they know to say, no, I can be impartial. He just said what he was thinking. He got scrapped. He said everybody else got on the jury and immediately found me guilty just because they had already determined I was guilty just for sitting there.
Yeah.
So, did this go off on a tangent? What happened? That was a tangent, right? Did I go off on a tangent?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, so arms dealer, Deveroli, made tens of millions of dollars, a ton of money. These guys, these arms dealers make a ton of money, bro.
Yeah.
Make a ton.
I don't know if it's worth it.
I know.
I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. And you're dealing with a lot of unsavory people, and they're always willing to kind of cut each other's throat. Which I was questionable on Deveroli. Like, I was like, bro, did you ever get fucked over? He's like, and of course, Deveroli doesn't get fucked over.
Right.
Deveroli,
like, nobody messes with me.
Yeah. It's Deveroli. It's like, no, I don't.
You just don't. You didn't realize when you got messed over.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Deveroli's like, you don't fuck me over. I fuck you over. Like,
right.
That's how this works. And it's true. And he explained to me how the money gets transferred and stuff. But he screwed over many, many people. And,
Yeah.
But that's just that world in general. It
seems to be.
It's slippery.
Yeah. No thanks.
When and why did you start the YouTube channel?
I started the YouTube channel as nothing. I never intentionally did it to do views. My whole life I've grown up fixing things, buying broken motorcycles and four-wheelers and cars and just flipping them and fixing them. And then I had a midlife crisis, joined the military at the ripe young age of 40.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
How late can you join the military?
40. So
Wow.
40 was the age cutoff. And my birthday is February 20th, and I enlisted on the 14th of February. So 6 days before the age cutoff.
Wow.
So then go into full midlife crisis mode, and it's with the Florida Air Guard. So I have to commute all the way from Tampa to Jacksonville every single month for 6 years. And that's about a 4.5 hour drive, and that drive sucks. Mm-hmm. Buddy of mine who was a pilot just said, hey, instead of that drive, why don't you just buy a little airplane? That's a great idea. I had never even been in a little airplane, so I immediately went out and bought an airplane, as all smart people do.
Did you have a pilot's license?
No. Okay. I never even been in one of these things. So that makes for, I guess, another good story. Yeah. But I also knew that I had done the mechanics and the car stuff enough that I bought it as a good enough deal that if it didn't work out, I could just sell it and get my money back. I bought the airplane. Then I did and this was during 2020, so the world was shut down, gas was cheap. We were flying this thing, 3, 4, 5 times a week. I got my pilot's license and my instrument rating in 5 months.
Okay. You just said you were flying. I was like, but you don't have a license.
Well, yeah, so that was I bought the airplane, then did all my training, and then I was able to get my license. Well, the same guy that told me to get my license to do the trip was also the same guy that said, whenever you have this airplane, when you're done with your training, sell it and then buy the airplane you're going to keep for a while. The airplane you want is going to be, one of these kind of airplanes. Where I fly to when I do my military training on that airport, there was one of those airplanes sitting kind of abandoned on the ramp. I started asking around. It was for sale. And I just took my phone out and went, hey, watch me go bankrupt putting this old airplane in the air. and posted it on YouTube, and people seem to really enjoy it. Because I've seen a million car shows where they do all the restoration of cars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've never seen one with airplanes. I know why now, because airplanes are insanely expensive, and they're legal, and all the requirements that you go through, it's very difficult. But that was, 4 or 5 years ago now. And then
What was the airplane?
it was a Cherokee 6300, if you want to get airplane nerdy.
Cherokee. Is that Piper? Or-
It is.
Okay.
Very good. All right. We got a fellow aviation enthusiast.
Nah.
If you knew that much.
I wrote a book about a guy named Marcus Schrinker who took his plane up. He was, during the financial crisis, 2008, he was being investigated, and he knew he was about to be arrested. And so he took up he had a Meridian, Piper Meridian.
That's a nice plane.
Yeah, it was. And he took it up and called in a distress signal, said his windshield was spider cracking. And then he said, "Oh, it's imploded. I'm bleeding." I remember he said, I'm bleeding profusely. Who the fuck says that?
I know. It's
He's
like,
such a jackass.
that's
So,
okay.
so he's, and then what he does is he puts on his parachute. He puts it on autopilot, puts on his parachute, and opens the plane, the back door, and dives out.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah. Well, because he's trying to fake his own death.
Clearly.
But he's a jackass. And so he thought the plane was going to go out over the Gulf and run out of fuel. The problem was when he opened the door, the drag burned off so much fuel. So now that the plane is trying to maintain altitude.
Yeah.
And so it can't do it because the doors are open. And the doors are
I'm
there.
surprised it didn't kick off the autopilot with that airplane.
No, because it continues. Matter of fact, because he stopped responding, they sent out like 2 F-15s or F-16s to go and fly. And of course they can't fly as slow as the plane, so they're having to do this.
Right.
But they could, 1, see nobody's flying it. 2, there's a door open. So it burned off.
Yeah, that's a big clue.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this guy might have jumped out. So then it burned off all the fuel and landed a few miles shy of the Gulf. And by the way, that of course, so it lands in this swampy area, rips off the wings, tail, everything. But the one thing that was in pristine condition was the windshield,
Of course.
which it imploded.
Yes, of course.
So 3 days later, they found him at a campground. He was everywhere. But so as a result, I had to go through the whole. He took what do they call it, a Spirit flight or the flight where they take you up the first time kind of for free to see if you like it.
Oh, yeah.
Investigation flight, or they have a name for it or something. They took him up and it was like in a Cherokee apparently.
Yeah.
And so that's a very common, inexpensive.
A discovery flight.
Discovery flight. Thank
Yeah.
you. They took an inexpensive plane to fly that is, or
It's usually a little trainer flight, and it's $100. It's the drug that gets you in. You're like, no, curse you.
Like I'm not supposed to let you hold. I'm going to let you go ahead.
Oh yeah, every time.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. Oh, that's it. And he fell in love. So then he ended up being a stunt pilot. He bought one. He went to Purdue, got his aeronautic license or degree and the whole thing. And it ended up with a Piper. And then of course, whatever that stunt plane is, these guys all have, that there's, you would know, it's like the engine's a Pratt and Whitney or Pratt and, am I wrong?
Well, there's a handful of different ones, right?
Yeah,
So a big radial engine for an old biplane, or it's usually a Lycoming 540.
This was for a stunt plane. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was anyway. He did that, so I had to hear about it and learn all about it, even though this guy was such a jerk off, bro. I'm gonna give you the book. Remind me, I will give you the book I wrote.
I mean, it sounds like that you wrote.
That I wrote.
Okay.
Because I wrote a book about, he's a pathological liar. Like you'd be reading, it's just so overwhelmingly horrible. But the plane stuff would be kind of interesting to you. You'd understand it more than I did, but you'd see also the hilariousness of this guy. Like, what were you thinking, bro?
Yeah, I mean, to fake your own death. First off, you switch it over to 7600 and just send it. Or even 7700, because you have squawk codes. So 77, you're going to heaven. That's how you remember that. You're crashing. Something's on fire. It's about to get bad. 75, 75, Obama's, or not Obama. Who's Who's the terrorist guy that we took out?
Osama?
Osama. See, it's Osama bin Laden or Obama Biden thing. It sounds, just saying. Anyways, 75, Osama's alive is how, one of the ways to remember that. And that's if you're getting a terrorist takeover on the plane. You squawk 7,500 and they know that you're sending a distress, that there's a hijacking type thing taking place in the airplane. 7,600 means your radios don't work. You lost communication.
Well, he went with there's why can't I think today, bro? I got to finish this whole thing.
Yeah, you need to do your...
It's he went with there's extreme turbulence when the skies were perfectly clear.
Well, those are the worst turbulent days.
Yeah, but there was
clear
no
turbulence.
But whatever nobody else has responded saying
yeah.
there's turbulence. Middle of the night, nobody's saying turbulence.
Well, I mean, why? Yeah.
You're saying turbulence. It's so bad. Your windshield like everything about it was like, this doesn't make sense. Nothing this guy is saying.
Anybody on the radio is like, I think this guy's on drugs.
Yeah, I think he's about to fake his own death. But anyway, didn't work out for him. But yeah, so I'll give you the book when you leave. If you have the time, you could read it.
There you go.
Pretty good. Nobody else has. That's right. So, but yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. What
you got
midlife crisis.
Bought the Cherokee. You're in
midlife
the
crisis. Military. Bought the airplane. Took my phone out and I just said, "Watch me go bankrupt fixing up this old airplane." The mechanic at the airport where I was at, super great guy, older gentleman, kind of took me under his wing. And my whole background was in auto mechanics, and I've got an electromechanical engineering degree and stuff like that. So this isn't new, the mechanical part, but everything about aviation is different than the automotive world. They use different materials, different chemicals, sealants. It's all very different. I spent the next 5 months restoring that airplane front to back, wingtip to wingtip.
How much was the plane?
Well, that was a great thing. I learned that you buy an engine and you get an airplane for free. Okay. In aviation world, that's kind of the deal, because the engine is far and away the most expensive part of an airplane. Great example is that airplane that I bought. I paid $45,000 for it, and it has not been flown. And this was in 2020 or 2021. The airplane hadn't been legally flying since 1997, so it was a long time.
Yeah.
However, that engine that was sitting on that thing by itself was worth $40,000, and the propeller that was put on it was worth about $12,000 by itself. So just those two pieces right there, I could have made my money back and cut the rest of the airplane up and scrapped it. So I knew that even if it turned out wrong, I'd still at least make my money back out of it. And then I ended up spending another $55,000 on that airplane over the next 5 months to get it flying. So I was into this airplane for 110. Then the market, because of COVID and everything else, everybody stopped wanting to travel via commercial, and everybody started doing a lot more private flights and general aviation stuff. And gas was still pretty cheap. So that airplane went from a value of about 110 or 120 to almost 200,000 within a year. Just skyrocketed straight up. So I ended up actually selling that airplane because I saw the value in it. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I can make a year's income on this in one deal. So I sold that, and then I found 3 abandoned airplanes in Pennsylvania, and that's really where my YouTube channel started, was those 3 airplanes. One hadn't seen the light of day since 1981, and it was a Cessna 310.
Are these just, what do you mean abandoned? Like you don't just pick up an airplane, like somebody owned them, right? Or you have to buy it from somebody. It's not like you find a ship, you find a boat in the middle of the bay, you get to just take it.
Right. So these particular airplanes were just, unfortunately, a common story is that the pilot and the airplane owner gets older, they lose their medical, they can no longer legally fly, so they put the airplane away in a hangar. And they always say, one day, I'll get my medical back, I'll get it, I'll do it one day. Well, that's 10, 20, 30, 40 years have gone by, and it's still one day. Until one of a couple of things usually happens. They pass away, honestly, is how most of it happens. And then the family that is not really aviation people they're now stuck with this stuff, and they have to figure out how to get rid of it or keep paying for hangar rent and other things. So they then will sell it off. The other thing is the person just gets old enough to go, okay, I guess I'm not going to be able to do it. And that's kind of rare, honestly. And then they sell it or put it up for sale.
So this guy had 3 planes, and he passed away, and his family said just.
This was an interesting guy. So what had happened was they actually moved the airport. His house used to be connected to the runway, to the taxiway. And then somebody came in and bought the entire airport. They moved it like a quarter of a mile away. So it was all on one gigantic piece of property, but they moved the runway to try to make it bigger so they could get more contracts for cargo and stuff like that. This was before Amazon Prime, but the same type of deal. Well, in order to do that, he lost his access to the runway. So he now had this 50-foot cliff where they cut it all out. And so he just had these airplanes on his property that he didn't know how to get them back to the runway. And so that one was kind of a weird deal. The only way to get it back was by tractor to take part of the wings off and then take it down the road to get it back over there, or by helicopter, just lifting it up and putting it back over there. And those were not really viable options. So he ended up putting it on Facebook Marketplace, and I went and bought them. And that's kind of where the whole channel.
How'd you get them out of there?
We cut them up.
Okay.
Yeah, we only cut one of them up because it was really junk. The other ones we disassembled and then brought them back to Florida to try to get them going again. And unfortunately, they did not.
Really?
Because they were just too far gone.
Okay.
Yeah. One was, we called it Mighty Mouse because it was filled from the bottom to the top of the wingtip to wingtip, front to back with mouse nest. It was the nastiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then once we finally got all the mouse stuff cleaned out, it had corroded, because most airplanes are made of aluminum. It had corroded out that aluminum so bad that it destroyed that airplane. It was not savable without essentially replacing half of the fuselage of the airplane.
Okay. And so that was a loss. Was it a loss, or you still do okay?
No. Because, again, you buy an engine, you get an airplane for free.
Right.
Both of those engines were freshly rebuilt when he put it away.
Okay.
They still had the Sharpie marker of the numbers on top of the pistons and stuff like that inside the engines. And I had done my videos with them, and we made some content out of it and had some good adventures doing that. And then I ended up buying another similar 310 out of California, and we flew that back and then took what good parts were off of the old one to keep for the flying airplane. And then the old airplane we ended up donating to the museum at Sun and Fun. They have an A&P school, an airplane airframe and power plant, like a technical college there.
Right.
So we donated it to that school, and now they're training the next generation of airplane mechanics how to fix airplanes. So that worked out pretty good.
Okay.
Yep.
How long does this go on until we get to Elvis?
Yes, the Elvis. Well, so
is there any more planes, or was that
there's lots more planes. However, all of that is what led to the channel.
For anybody that this is their first time ever seeing you, like, what are you posting on your own channel?
I find interesting abandoned airplanes and try to get them flying again.
Right.
And then take them on adventures. And for the ones that can't get flying, we try to do something with them, whether it's create a mobile Elvis Jet thing or, something with them. But
you got to come up with a cool name
for the Elvis Jet.
For your Elvis.
So I have. That's just it. I have the domain elvisjet.com.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, it's kind of just the Elvis Jet.
Okay.
It's
Elvis-mobile.
easy. Yeah, Elvis Mobile. And I kept calling it an RV, but people think we changed the inside to be an RV, but we haven't changed anything because it's still a jet.
Why don't you get a wrap? If you're saying you don't know how to kind of indicate to people this is Elvis's, why don't you get like a wrap or something that says Elvis on the side or something? Or is it?
Well, so our attorneys, because all of the Elvis and his likeness and everything else is all highly, highly copyrighted and trademarked. However, the way I get around that with the little pieces that I sell is it's a historical fact.
Yeah, I was going to say
It just says owned by Elvis A. Presley.
yeah, it's true.
So we were looking at putting in big letters on the top because it's red with silver stripes. So we were just going to put on there owned by Elvis Presley, and it just in big letters. It's not going to be the most classy thing, but at least people will be like, oh wow. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Elvis's Hound Dog 2.
Hound Dog 3.
3?
Something, I don't know. Well, the Hound Dog 2 was his first one up there. And Hound Dog 1 was the record that he made that allowed him to pay for that jet.
And then there's the Lisa Marie.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Marie.
The big one, yeah.
Okay.
But now
you got.
So yeah, go to the channel. We do all aviation. It's entertainment first, and you might learn something. It's not a boring aviation channel where we talk about all the ways that flying in an aluminum can 20,000 feet in the air are going to kill you.
Do you ever interview people?
Not really. We might do some interviews if it relates to the airplane that we're
I
doing.
thought you wanted to interview
Well, that guy, because it directly relates to the Elvis jet. And Buzz Aldrin. So the Learjet that I just bought was part of Buzz Aldrin and NASA stuff.
Oh, I feel like you missed that part. That's the first I heard that.
Yeah,
you said you bought one. You didn't say that.
Right.
Okay.
So I bought a Learjet at auction that is connected with Buzz Aldrin and NASA. And Buzz Aldrin's still alive, and he lives right there where this airplane is at. So that was the other person I want to interview is Buzz Aldrin with the jet. But I mean, I've had friends and things that are Top Gun pilots and stuff like that we would interview, or we'd go in an airplane and while we're flying, we'd talk and have a conversation. But no, I've never. I don't know. I haven't.
This doesn't appeal to you.
I like the stories.
This doesn't appeal.
I like the stories, but there's something about physically seeing something dead and abandoned and working on it until it comes to life.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Hey, you guys, thanks for watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Also, please share the video. We're going to leave Jimmy's link to Jimmy's World, which is the YouTube channel. We're going to leave the link in the description box so you can go there, click on it, check out all of his content, and subscribe. Do you have do you have Instagram or anything like that? No?
Yeah.
Well, he's got, what else do you have?
All the social.
Oh, yeah.
The normal stuff. I'm an influencer. That's what we do.
Okay. Plus, we're going to leave all of the other, all of Jimmy's other social.
Did you ever think that this is what you'd actually be doing called an influencer? It's so weird.
No, it's almost embarrassing. Really, it's silly.
Influencer though.
You do understand that 6 years ago, I was laying in a bunk bed in federal prison thinking I was going to end up working at McDonald's. And this is what I didn't even know this was a thing.
There you go.
Right?
You never know.
You don't know. I don't know.
I feel.
And so for the first year or two, when people would be like, "You're a YouTuber," or "You're oh yeah, bro, you're an influencer," I was like, that just seems silly. That didn't even seem like a real thing.
Yeah.
And everybody I'd seen that was an influencer was like a 12-year-old girl. You know?
Look at me and my dog. We're going out to lunch. Look at this lunch that we just had.
And
this is amazing.
and the last person you should take advice from is a guy that just got out of federal prison. You know what I'm saying? People, you know what I'm saying? I shouldn't be influencing
for me, I'm like,
anybody.
There's some stories there.
Oh, there's some stories there.
Or the thing with the plaque.
Oh yeah, and then this is funny because I would see when I was in the halfway house, I would see guys doing videos, YouTubers doing videos. I'm probably more comfortable with YouTuber. So doing videos where they would get their 100,000, their plaque for 100,000, and they would be like, "Oh my gosh," and they'd unwrap it and everything, and I would think, bro, aren't you embarrassed?
Mine is still in the box.
Really? So
I haven't even taken it. I've taken it out once, and I did a gag where I threw it in an airplane, and then I put it back in the box, and I've never taken it out.
Listen, I looked at this and I thought I would never do that, and then we got this, and I was like, when we got the notification that we could apply, I was like, Colby, you need to apply for this. And then when we got it, I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I thought, you were embarrassed about
Yeah.
for these guys that were doing it, and now you think this is cool. Well, it's just, this is a horrible situation. It's just, it's eroded all of my values.
Says the ex-con.
Exactly. Right. But I love, the other thing is hilarious when you get recognized and somebody's like, you're walking, somebody's like, oh my God, hey, Matt Cox, what are you doing? I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it
I'm
is.
like,
Yeah.
damn, for a guy who hid most of his life. Now it's like, it's so cool. I didn't want to approach you. I saw you. I'm like, no, absolutely. Approach me. Let's get a picture.
Yeah.
You're the reason I don't have to have a job. So, all right. So that's it. Jimmy's description, in the description, click, go there, check it out. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys watching so much. See ya.